The Voyage is the single craziest wooden roller coaster ever built. Located at Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana, the ride opened in 2006 and is manufactured by the Gravity Group. To this day, it is the second longest wooden roller coaster in the world at 6,442 feet long, the fifth tallest in the world at 159 feet tall, and the sixth fastest in the world at 67 miles per hour. That does mean that there are some that are taller and faster out there, but none top the pure insanity that is this layout. It is currently the record holder for the most airtime on any wood coaster at 24.3 seconds, and I can confirm it absolutely feels that way. The way I like to describe the Voyage is basically 3 rides in one. Just when you think it's about done, you're halfway through. And when you really think you're done, no, you still have an extra 1,000 feet of track to go. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the ride experience on the Voyage, tell you what makes it work, and tell you why I think it's the world's best wood coaster, and frankly, I wouldn't blame anyone for having this as their favorite roller coaster, period. Now, little backstory. The Voyage is the third wooden roller coaster to open up at Holiday World. They first debuted the Raven at the front of the park in 1995, the Legend right next door in 2000, and then 6 years later opened the Voyage. The ride was the brainchild of Will Cook, the owner of Holiday World at the time. He wanted to build the greatest wooden coaster on the planet and reached out to the newly formed Gravity Group. Now, the Gravity Group was founded by 4 team members who came together after Custom Coasters International went bankrupt. That's the company that produced Raven and Legend, so it made sense that Holiday World wanted to work with them one more time. The challenge is, when you already have 2 insane wood coasters like Raven and Legend, how on earth do you top them? And the answer is, by doing something different. The ride experience on Legend primarily consists of lateral forces. Raven features some laterals as well as airtime. So with the Voyage, they said, let's focus on sending riders up out of their seat, have some non-stop pacing, and even throw in a mix of bank turns. This was really innovative at the time. Back when CCI did Raven and Legend, wood coasters could only bank so much. That's why you consistently are getting thrown to the side. But with the Voyage, they took those turns and raised them up to a 90-degree bank, which hadn't really been done before. And there's actually 3 sections on the Voyage that features that. Now, as of when this video is being made, we're getting closer and closer to the Voyage being 20 years old. There's plenty of wood coasters out there that feature 90-degree bank turns, but something about the way that the Voyage does them just makes it feel different. I think it just has to do with how raw and out of control this coaster feels. And honestly, I think it has something to do with the trains. The Voyage is the largest coaster to ever feature PTC trains. This is like your classic wood coaster car that you can find on rides all across the world. In this case, you have a 6-car train, each car holding 4 passengers. And if you've ridden the Voyage, you know that when you take a seat in this train, something about doing these maneuvers in this tiny little box car only elevates that experience. You feel totally exposed and you're gonna get tossed around a lot, and it's just awesome. Now, what's interesting is there was a short period of time where the Voyage was planned to receive Gravity Group's Timberliner trains, but due to an assortment of delays and things not going quite as planned, the Timberliner project was canceled. The Voyage would continue to operate with PTC trains, but back when it opened, it had a 7-car train. As I mentioned, there are 6 cars currently on the Voyage, so originally it held 4 more riders. It's really kind of crazy to think about what this layout probably felt like from that last car. I never got to experience it when it had the 7-car train, but I can only imagine how wild it probably was. Now, the Voyage operates with 2 trains on the track at a time. However, this ride is so long that if Holiday World wanted to run 3 trains on it, they absolutely could. I've seen it where the crews have dispatched a train and are just standing around waiting for that next train to come back. Because technically, you can send a train once the previous train has passed through that mid-course brake run. That's why when the operations are good, you can get a shot where one train is going up the lift hill as the other is passing right by it. The thing is, Holiday World rarely gets the crowds where it would even be necessary to operate Voyage with 3 trains. I can think of like one time when we had ERT during a special event where it would have been beneficial. But unless you go on a busy weekend, usually the Voyage's line isn't more than a station wait, especially if you go on a weekday. A lot of the public that visits Holiday World like to hang out in the water park, which, that's understandable. It's a fantastic water park. But that means if you're a coaster enthusiast and you just want to stay in your seat and lap this thing, oftentimes you can totally do that. I will give a fair word of warning though, if you've never ridden the Voyage, prepare yourself. This can be kind of a tough ride to marathon. There's so much packed into this ride experience that it's kind of exhausting to ride. The following is a collection of real quotes I have heard from people right after they came off the Voyage. It treats me like I owe it money. It feels like I went to heaven and back. An out-of-body experience, literally the perfect ride, an absolute masterpiece, and I need a nap. I've now been riding the Voyage every year since 2016, and I can safely say that I have emotionally felt all of those things at least once. But let's take a dive into what this ride experience is actually like. So the Voyage is located in the Thanksgiving section of the park. When you enter your station building, it's loosely themed to a ship. The Voyage, as you can probably guess, is themed to the Pilgrims traveling to North America on the Mayflower in 1620. So you're riding on the ship that they took to get to the New World, although I'm sure that the Voyage is a lot more fun than the actual voyage that the Pilgrims took. Just a guess, though. When you dispatch out of the station, you first pass through a long section of straight track. This is actually where they'll transfer trains off so they can store them for the night. You'll pass through a small dip and begin climbing up your lift hill. 159 feet up to the top. One time I actually got to do a lift walk for the Voyage. It was a heck of a lot of stairs, but just getting the opportunity to take in that view, see all of the other rides in the park is just amazing. You'll pass under a collection of flags and you'll be staring down a 66-degree drop. You'll have a view of Thunderbird and two big airtime hills out in front of you, but that's it. You can't see any of the rest of the coaster you're about to experience. And that is what makes this such a good night ride. The Voyage primarily travels out through the woods into complete darkness. You are so far away from the rest of the park, it is like actually insane. This first drop is a heck of a way to start off your experience, but I'll be honest, it is nowhere near the most memorable part of the ride. The first 3 moments on the Voyage feel like a wood coaster version of a hyper. So you have 2 huge back-to-back hills. Riders are absolutely launched out of your seat. Doesn't matter where you're sitting, but of course I recommend the front row and the back car. Personally, I like the second to last row better than the very last row. I think it's a bit smoother, but frankly, you're going to get tossed around no matter where you sit. At the bottom of the first hill, you pass under a section of Thunderbird track. That's one of the cool crossover moments that happen with these 2 rides. You get launched up into a second hill. This one's slightly turning to the left, so you're also getting a little bit of laterals. You can see Thunderbird's final inversion out in front of you. That's the second main crossover, but you don't really feel that on this coaster because you're diving then into a tunnel. The Voyage features 5 different underground tunnels, and some of them you go through more than once. So there's actually a total of 8 underground moments. One of the craziest sensations is when you pay attention to the temperature change. If it's super hot out, it feels amazing in those tunnels. And in my opinion, this is when the Voyage really starts to build up speed, because from here on out, you're going to stay relatively low to the ground. The next hill launches you up out of the tunnel, briefly into daylight. You're staying low to the ground, getting ejector airtime, slightly banking to the right into another tunnel, and then you shoot out into another traditional camelback. And this is going to be the last one of these you're going to experience for a while, because your next section is the Spaghetti Bowl. A twisted mess of track where you don't know where you're going. It is pure chaos. It's also filled with some of those 90-degree bank turns I talked about earlier. It all starts with yet another tunnel. You shoot out, twist to the right, drop down and get ejected to the left. You're banking sharply to the side, experience a slight little bunny hop, and then you hit Crazy Bank number 1. This leads you a twist now to the right into Crazy Bank number 2. You twist back to the left into the same tunnel we were talking about earlier, but this time you're going the opposite direction, and then you hit your mid-course brake run. You are now halfway through the ride. For most wood coasters, this mid-course would actually be the final brakes, and I think anyone would praise that wood coaster experience that you've had thus far. If you ride the Voyage during the daytime, these trims will slow it down a bit, and that does impact the start of the rest of your experience. But I think they do it because the second half of the Voyage can get real crazy. It's probably too much for the average person. But coaster nerds are so crazy that every year during the Coaster Enthusiast event Hollywood Nights, the teams at Holiday World will turn those trims off. You'll just slide on through for your night rides, and it makes the second half just absolutely insane. So don't get me wrong, I love the Voyage no matter what, but experiencing a trimless night ride is by far the best way to do this coaster. It's that single action which makes that event a must-do. Now, whether the trims are on or off, for this triple down, you'll definitely want to be sitting in the back car. The first 2 downs are great and all, but this third down is so much bigger than either of them, and in pitch darkness, you don't expect it. You think that after that second down, you're going to rise back up, but instead, you enter a huge drop. It is absolutely insane airtime, and that sends you out of the tunnel into another camelback airtime hill. This one, of course, much smaller than the others, but it is full of ejector airtime. At this point, you're flying through that steel lattice structure right up against those larger airtime hills that you already passed over. You get yanked to the right as you're ejected into another hill. You pass under a cover that's directly below the bottom of Thunderbird's loop. That's probably as close as these two rides get. However, again, when you're riding the Voyage, you barely even notice it. You're going that fast. But it does make for some great photo ops if you're doing a backstage tour of the Voyage. You get twisted to the left and yanked to the right. Switch from the left-hand side of the coaster underneath the track. You're now on the right side, banking up against the ground. You then switch back to the left side of the coaster and into another huge bank turn that sends you back to the right side. You're right up against the ground, and then you fly over the bottom of Voyage's lift hill. You can see that other train starting up the lift. That's why I say that sometimes you can get that cool crossover photo moment. And I just love how up until this point, all of these individual maneuvers have literally just been S-bending around the previous structure that you already passed over. Like they're just threading this track through, tossing riders around left and right. After you pass over the lift, you then bank sharply to the right, passing directly next to the station. And logically, you're probably thinking, wow, okay, I see the station building. We must be about to hit the brakes. Well, not exactly. First, you shoot out of a tunnel, get thrown sharply to the left. You're banking right up against the ground. You pass into your final tunnel. You hit a sharp pop of ejector airtime. You're banking to the right. And then that's when you hit your final brakes. And now you can finally catch your breath. You know, there's plenty of wood coasters out there that I can think of that people are like, oh, I just love how long it is. It's so cool. But some of those rides don't feel super eventful. I even think about the Beast, the world's longest wood coaster. Super iconic ride, right? But literally half of the experience is straight track. The Voyage may be 1,000 feet less, but it actually uses that track to its full advantage. There is not an inch of track here that went wasted. And I think that's why this is the best wood coaster on the planet. No other ride in the world does what the Voyage does. It has the height, it has the speed, it has the length, the variation of elements, and of course the pacing. It doesn't just do them well, it goes above and beyond. And on top of all of that, when you turn out the lights, you can't see the hand in front of your face. It is so dark. And if you don't know the layout well, you're gonna get tossed around like a rag doll. I could use many words to describe the Voyage, but one that definitely comes to mind is aggressive. But that doesn't necessarily mean rough. Now, as you can imagine, retracking 6,442 feet of track can be a lot. However, the teams at Holiday World and the Gravity Group are phenomenal at keeping up with this ride. They retrack it every single year to keep it smooth, constantly redoing different sections, even when they don't feel that bad. Like I know most recently over last offseason, the Gravity Group came in and put in their pre-cut track over the finale. Last time I rode the Voyage, that section was glass smooth. The year before that, they did the first drop and airtime hills. That part felt incredible. Every time I come back to Holiday World, I find myself saying, wow, this ride is running better than it did last year. And it's just crazy to think for a ride that's currently been operating for 17 years, a wood coaster which requires more maintenance is just as good as it was when it probably opened. So, for the Voyage's final score, of course, I am giving it a 10 out of 10. This is one of the top must-do roller coasters on the planet. I like to think that any coaster enthusiast who rides this is gonna have it in their top 10. It's that good. And so with that, I have nothing else left to say except for go out and ride it. See for yourself what all the hype is about. And if you can get around to attending Hollywood Nights so you can experience the Voyage at night, I promise you, you will not regret it. So post all those thoughts down in the comments below of what you think of the Voyage. If you're new to the channel, I'd love if you could subscribe. We do roller coaster and amusement park reviews from places all around the world. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.